energy on conversion to LED streetlights. A number of our local governments are making that transition, but what's even more exciting now is the ability for new uses for these streetlights, whether it's electric vehicle charging, air sensing, etc. We're excited about those opportunities and look forward to seeing how our region, the greater Metropolitan Washington region, make that transition as well. Pleased to turn it over to my friend Jeff King from COG, and then we'll begin with the program. Jeff?
Thanks, Bob. Hello, everyone. Jeff King. I manage the Climate and Energy Program at the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments. We've been working on a climate agenda for a little more than 10 years now, and kind of parallel to that, we've been real interested in what we can do with our lighting and the efficiency of street lighting, and real pleased to see the advancements in the sector and it going beyond just the efficiency and moving to LEDs, but adding on the other features. And so real pleased today to have the chance to really dive in and look a little more closely at what the possibilities are. And so I won't take up more time. It'd be great to go ahead and get started with the agenda. And Dale, do you want to introduce the? You're on mute.
Thanks, Jeff. Bob, Steve, you're on.
I'm Steve Morgan with Clean Energy Solutions, and with me is Nora Barger, and the two of us and a fellow named John Clune provide technical assistance to municipalities in both Maryland and Virginia under a grant from the Department of Energy that's administered through the Maryland Energy Administration, and NVRC is a partner along with MWCOG and the State Energy Office in Virginia. Next slide, please. Next slide. These are our partners. Next slide. So we've been at this for almost 3 years now. We got the award in June, I'm sorry, 2.5 years. We got the award in June of 2019. We're finishing in January of 2022. We have a total of $500,000 distributed amongst the partners during this time period from DOE. Next slide, please. So what do we do? The technical assistance that our group provides features outreach and education about the advantages, the costs, and benefits of LED streetlights. We help local governments do inventories of their existing streetlights, and we conduct cost-benefit analysis, example of which we'll show you in a second. And we provide, in the wake of that analysis, technical assistance for local governments who want to move forward to partial or complete conversions with LEDs. And we try to give local governments objective information on the technical issues and the economic issues so they can better negotiate with their utilities for a better tariff and local purchase options through their utility. And finally, we disseminate best practices on LED conversions, not just in Maryland and Virginia, but across the country. And we have a major assist in that from NASIO. So that's basically what it is that we have been doing for the last 2.5 years. Oh, the NASIO is the National Association of State Energy Offices, by the way. Next slide. These are our participating municipalities. You can see there's 16 of them. We've helped more than the 16, but these 16 have signed formal memorandum of agreements with us. And we provide everything from helping them to do those inventories to helping them to figure out how to negotiate with utility and or to themselves contract to do installations. Next slide. This is a testing of your eyesight, but it's basically a summary, a template summary of the cost-benefit analysis we do for a municipality, given how many streetlights they have of each size and type, and we try to indicate what the LED prototype would be, the LED conversion would be, and what it costs and what its benefits are in kWh and costs. Next slide. So finally, these are the summary results that we've had so far in Maryland and Virginia. Most important part of that probably is the last lower right slide that says we have basically slightly less than a 5-year payback on the municipalities in Maryland and Virginia that have converted. I can say that there's a fairly big difference in how communities can move forward and their barriers and opportunities depending upon what utility district they're in. I think we have Dominion on the phone with us from Virginia, and they have one of the best tariffs and one of the best conversion opportunity infrastructure protocols set up. And so we're pleased to work with Dominion on these issues. And with that, I will turn it back to Dale or Jeff for the next presentation.
So just to put this into context, there's not just the extraordinary work that Steve and Bob and Jeff referenced that taking place to transform LED streetlights in our region, but there's some really interesting stories that are taking place in cities like Bottrop, Germany, where the LED conversion process of streetlights has been complemented also with the addition or enhancement of EV charging monitors for determining what we would consider quality criteria, air pollutants. It's just a really exceptional story. And so we would introduce Torsten Radow from the city of Bottrop and his work to take these into potentially a whole new chapter, not just in Northern Virginia, but in the United States.
Okay.
You ready?
I'm ready. Thank you. Thank you, Dale. Hello, everyone. Before I start, I'd like to introduce myself to you. My name is Torsten Radow, and I work for more than 22 years for the city of Bottrop. There I'm responsible for planning, construction, and services to the streetlights in the city. And today I'd like to talk to you about LED 2020, more than 50% LED streetlights in the city. Please, next slide. Before we get in, I'd like to give you a view to the city of Bottrop. On the map on the right side, this little red area, that's the city of Bottrop, and the big blue line in the west of it, that's the River Rhine. Our next neighbor countries are the Netherlands and Belgium, and our city is around 100 square kilometer big. And at the end of the last year, we had nearly 120,000 residents. City rights were given in 1919, and coal mining was very important for Bottrop for more than 150 years. And the last German coal mine closed at the end of 2018 in Bottrop. It was the mine Prosper Haniel. But even earlier, we started to reduce CO2 emission, and since 2005, we have for the first time the goals of the European Energy Award achieved. The European Energy Award is a competition between many European cities to reduce the energy consumption in any part of the city, in transportation, water, electricity, streetlights as well, heatings, and so on. Since 2011, we have this award in gold, so we are quite good, I think. And from 2010 to 2020, we had another big project in the city. It was called Innovation City. And in a project area, there was the order to reduce the CO2 emission by 50%. And the area was nearly as half big as the city. We made it successful. So our next goal is to make all of Bottrop climate neutral by 2035. and I think we are on a good way. Next slide, please. At the end of 2020, we had 6,300 LED lights in Bottrop. At the end of this year, I think it might be around 7,500 or a bit more. But in 2020, another 1,300 streetlights were fitted with insect-friendly LED components. So the level was exactly by 52.5% of the roundabout 12,000 streetlights that we have in the city. And the CO2 saving was between 50 and 85%. We use two different ways. I show you later more. Since the end of last year, we also use sensors. They can help to increase these numbers even more. And our goal is to fit all streetlights in Bottrop with LED by the end of 2025. Next slide, please. Here, a first example for the 50% solution. This 15-year-old streetlight was refitted with a 35-watt LED lamp during the service. It's pretty easy. It's nearly plug and play. What was not so easy was to find the right LED lamp that has the same light character as the sodium lamp before, because we had to make sure that the light level on the streets and on the sidewalks are the same as before. Next slide, please. Also here, a 10-year-old streetlight pole with a 50-watt sodium lamp refitted with a 21-watt LED lamp. That's one way, because as I told, we started with European Energy Award in 2005, and there were no LED light available. But we have many lights of this in the city, and yeah, we make retrofit with it. Next slide, please. The other way we go is with new LED light systems combined with remote management features. During the last 10 years, we tested different remote management systems, like by cable power line or like radio control. And this system runs like your mobile phone. And we can do adjusted dimming profiles, can give us to the lights, receive failure reports if there is a street light not running, have surveillance of pedestrian crossing, what is very important in Germany, use sensors, and currently we have 462 street lights with this remote management system in the city. And in case of restoration works or road building, every new street light will be equipped with this remote management features. That helps us very much. Next slide, please. Okay, here we have a dimming profile from a streetlight pole downtown Bottrop. And this profile is not fixed over the week. This profile is from Monday to Friday. We start with 100% and over the night we go down and to the morning we go up again. Over the weekend, because there's a quite good place to spend Friday or Saturday night in Bottrop, you find there are many pubs, restaurants, and so on. The 100% block is even bigger than over the week, because we like to make it more comfortable and safety for the people there. Next slide, please. Here we can have a view in a new LED light. On the left, you can see the communication unit on the top of the street light is as big as a puck from ice hockey. And inside, in this little black box, there's all the technique in what is necessary to let the LEDs run. On the right, we can see the LED field and the lens field. Sorry. We can choose we can choose from more than 20 different lens types. So this street light we can use for nearly every street type in Bottrop. And also you can see the movement sensor down under the street light. On the next slide, we can see our test field in a park, thanks, near the town hall. There's a sensor fixed and it works well. But I also like to give you some facts about what we have done. From 2005 to 2020, all street lights in Bottrop were converted. So we have done saving, we have looked for saving solutions for every single street light in the city. Until 2011, with conventional street lights, the saving was up to 40%. In 2009, we started first test with LED lights. And since 2012, with LED lights, the energy saving goes up to 85%. 2012 was the year where the life cycle cost of the LED lights were even lower than the conventional. So we decided, no, we used LED lights everywhere. And yeah, we can see in this time, it was possible for us to save nearly 15 million kilowatt hours of energy, around 10,000 tons of CO2, and nearly 3 million euros of money. I think that's not so bad. Next slide, please. But we also use the streetlight poles for air monitoring. By the way, I'm not really deep in this project. My job was to make it possible to use our infrastructure for industrial partners. But I have some information that I like to give you. If you need further information, give me a call or mail. Our industrial partners will be happy to help you if there's need. In 2019, we started tests with air quality measurement device. On the photo, you can see the Zephyr. EarthSense is a system from the UK, and there you can really measure many particles of chemical particles in the air. On the next slide, please, we can see our network in the city. We have 16 air quality sensors. They give us a level how the quality of the air change, and 8 advanced sensors with detailed information. Next slide, please. This slide, I think it's really interesting because it's exactly the measurement before the first and during the first lockdown in Germany last year. At the beginning, you can see the peaks during the rush hours, and at the middle of March, the lockdown started and the peaks became even lower. Next slide, please. For the experts in this round, the details of the Zephyr, that's what I can say about air monitoring. But I also like to talk about another part where we use streetlight poles. Next slide, please. It's charging stations. We started in 2015 with a test with a system from Ubitricity with a 3.7 kilowatt power system, where I think it's mostly enough to charge your car overnight or when you're in office. Nice with this smaller system is you can use the streetlight cables, and we have a lot of them in the city. We have a separate streetlight network. It looks like a spider web over the city. So we have many places where we can get electricity out of the ground only for the street lights. but we were also asked for another system with more power. And in 2018, we started a test with EV with a 22 kilowatt system. And you can see it on the photo. There I charge my e-vehicle in 1 hour. That's fine. What is we are not so happy about it is that the laws in Germany came more and more strictly over the last years. So the city of Bottrop is not allowed to do private business, but we are allowed to prepare our infrastructure for the future, like charging station, air monitoring, or what else. In this case, we have a continuation of the project with our electricity network operator. And on the next slides, I'd like to show you some details. Next slide, please. Here you can see how much energy was delivered over the last 12 months. And on the next slide, please, you can see the using time over the last 12 months. Next slide, please. Here we have a view how the customer started the charging process with our system. Yeah, that's for charging stations. Next slide, please. I was also asked if I could talk about solar streetlight. Yeah, well, I do. Today, we have only 2 solar streetlights in Bottrop because of the cable network that we have for the streetlights. But sometimes there's a place where it's difficult to prepare a streetlight system. So we started in June this test, and you can see on the top of it the solar panel, on the downside the LED field, the lens, the movement sensor. And on the next slide, please, I can tell you a bit more. Yeah, that's the middle of nowhere in Bottrop. We were asked if the people that live there can have a bit light on the street, and yeah, we tried it with this solar LED light system, because otherwise we had to put more than 100-meter cable to the ground, and that would be even more expensive. This LED light is fitted with a 30 Ah lithium battery that gives us more than 2 days reserve in December when there is no useful daylight available, and the maximum power output goes up to 3000 lumen. The single LED output is around 175 lumen per watt, and the color temperature is, as with all LED lights in Bottrop, by comfortable 3000 Kelvin. And this solar streetlight can be configured by Bluetooth, so you can decide how much light is necessary and how deep should it go when there is no in this space of the movement sensor. Yeah, next slide, please. So that was my presentation from Bottrop. I hope it is useful for you. I'm sorry for my rusty English, but my last English presentation is more than 25 years ago. Thank you all.
Torsten, you were fantastic. Thank you very much. For those
Thank you.
into Bottrop, you should run, not walk, because it's a veritable playground of energy sustainability. And so there are many reasons we're doing this webinar, one of which is the next presentation by Renee Wetzel from Ubitricity, because as Torsten referenced, one of the potential applications that complement the LED work is the inclusion or focus on EV infrastructure charging. And so there's this unique, innovative startup that we had the privilege of visiting a couple of years ago in Berlin, Rene and his team met us and introduced us to their work, and we were awakened to the partnership that they had struck with New York City about the applications of their technology. And then one of our board members from Arlington County expressed potential interest in applying this in Arlington County, which awakened our interest and helped contribute to the story that Rene is going to share with us right now. Rene, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Dale. I remember very well, and thank you very much for your continued interest and for also bringing us into the array of presentators here. I try to share my screen with you. I hope that works. And still yet another shop talk. I hope I can still see if there's questions coming up in the chat. If not, anyone feel free to somehow nudge me. Yeah, my name is Rene Wetzel. I'm in charge of everything that's happening at Ubitricity outside the borders of Europe. And we will come to that in a little small moment when we look at Ubitricity, what we do. Well, what we do is very easily explained. We are striving for creating EV charging possibilities for everyone, everywhere, and that has actually two things in mind. Always, of course, first and foremost, it is EV drivers that we want to give the opportunity to charge their cars wherever they park them. So what we see here is, well, actually it is a colleague from Ubitricity, but he's playing the role of a London resident in an actual London street, charging an actual London EV. Well, as we see, we have a very neat and nimble solution that can be retrofitted into existing charge points, existing lamp posts. So we're going into pre-existing infrastructure of the cities, and we're making use of what is already there. This is specifically in urban areas, in residential areas, where real estate is not used for cars, but actually for people, which makes a lot of sense, by the way. And the streets are used to park the cars, as it is in London, for example, the case for way over 40–50% of all residents. They all park their cars in the streets. So we need to bring charging to where the people actually park. Ubitricity is a rather small company. We are about 70 employees, a little bit more. We have two offices, one in Berlin, which is our headquarters, and we have a subsidiary in London, due to the fact that in London we are operating 3,600, actually a little bit more, 3,600 charge points that are, most of them fit into existing street posts. Ubitricity has been around for quite a while. It was founded 2008 with the actual idea. I said earlier, two things we had in mind, or the founders had in mind. I joined just 3.5 years before today, so I was not part in 2008. But the idea, one, make charging available for everyone, everywhere, or let's translate it into practical terms, to wherever cars are parked. And the other aspect to it is that cars are actually batteries on wheels that happen to move their location once in a while, but 23+ hours a day, they are just parked somewhere. And in that time, they can actually serve also as an energy storage for the grid. They do not necessarily have to give their energy away right away, but if we just think of the potential that it has to control the charging of batteries of EVs, and just say, okay, we're having a peak moment. It is 8 o'clock in the morning. Everyone's getting up, making coffee, making an egg, taking a train, etc., turning on the light in winter. This is maybe not the best time to charge an EV. So if we just think of the potential of pausing charging for a while, this makes total sense in the combination with ubiquitous charging infrastructure where cars are connected for a long, long time. In 2020, we have reached that point that we actually had the largest charging network in the UK. This was not only in absolute numbers for us a great reason to be proud, but also if we look into, and that is not on this graph, if we look into the speed of the rollout that we did. Actually, we started with a pilot of about 300 charge points in 2018. But the actual rollout was really just hitting the streets in about 2019. So we're talking about roughly 15, 18 months, let's say 2 years, to roll out over 2,000 charge points. And that is an incredible number that was made possible to the fact that we, with our technology, try to be as little invasive as possible with the city. We're bringing the charge points into existing infrastructure. We're making it, it can happen that actually an installer drives up to a charge point, installs, goes away an hour later, and we have a fully commissioned operational charge point in the network more without having to block any road, doing any civic work, digging up the street, etc. Let me stay here for a little moment. 21, this is this year, we are entering the German market. Thorsten already showed you, we have, of course, some installations pre-existing with the 2 charge point types he showed us. We can revisit them both in this presentation a little bit later. This has to do with a German market entry, and at the same time also we're addressing France, because after the UK, obviously, if you look at the European map, these markets are the most interesting ones. Plus, we happen to come from Berlin, which is the metropolitan city of Germany. So we thought might be a good idea. From there on, we will be then looking into further European markets and to see where we are going then next in the next 5 years. The goal for 25 is that we have 200,000 charge points out there. If sometimes I count it down and break it down, how many are these per day? And it gets a little bit scary, but I'm actually quite confident because the number of charge points that we rolled out in London in retrospect would have sounded utterly scary to us in 2018. So this is something that we feel very much ready to do. And moreover, not in the graph, but in the bottom right corner of this slide, you can also see that the Ubitricity logo is no longer alone. As of the beginning of 2021, so this year, we have become a part of the Shell group. So we have been fully acquired and have changed a, let's say, rather complex setup of shareholders with a clear one shareholder, one owner of the company, and we are integrating ourselves very happily into the portfolio of charging and mobility solutions of the Shell group, and are proud to be one cornerstone of the move towards renewables and energy transition of the Shell group. So this one aspect, the integration into the Shell group, is the one which we perceive as very positive, very pragmatically and practically. For us, of course, the sheer size of Shell and our sister companies, namely here Greenlots, which all of you probably know, at least by name, is also a Shell portfolio company. This makes life very much easier, makes our goals more achievable, and gives us, let's say, slightly bigger wings to actually fulfill what we are doing. And to bring our charging solutions also to markets outside of Europe, to look into opportunities that are arising in Northern America, for example. And Dale mentioned it. One example here is the partnership that we're having with the city of New York, where we are looking into deploying charge points as we've looked into them in the near future. Talked a lot about it all, but what is the actual product looking like and what does it bring to you? I think this is very important to touch at this point. On the right-hand side, we see a little bit more close-up the charge point, how it looks when it is retrofitted into the existing column of the streetlight. This is a very unrealistic picture. Usually the lamppost column is not so new. It is the pre-existing one, but for the matter of the purpose of a presentation, of course, we took a new one. You see actually not much more than just the outlet itself, which is required for the car or the cable to connect. And you see a QR code for the user to interact and some contact details in case he has any questions. Very good for users who do not have private parking. It is discreet and it does not require or make any additional furniture in the city required, which I think goes along pretty well with the fact that if there's one thing we do not want to take away, it is space from the city, especially not from pedestrians. It is very important that we do the most of the already occupied public space, and this is one large benefit here. Of course, we have benefits of the installation, and in general, as said, the very quick possibility of quick install. One question that usually comes and probably pops up in some of your minds right now is, but does it work in every charge, in every lamppost? It does work in conservatively guessed 2 to 5% of all of them. This is a very, very rough number, and it may look different. Very specifically. If you have concrete poles, we have to look into different solutions because we will probably not be able to make a hole big enough inside of them. If they are very narrow, we would have to look into that. But as long as there is 110 millimeters, pardon me that I'm not having the appropriate measurement in inch, I'm just having the metric value here, but I can follow up with that later. Then we should be able to go into, then of course we need the electrical supply in a sufficient manner here. And if we look into electric supply, then of course it goes very well hand in hand with initiatives like Thorsten was presenting, and as many municipalities in the world are driving them right now. The change to more energy efficient lighting, the integration of more smart city features and capabilities into the lamppost is helping a lot. Specifically, more energy efficient lighting frees up in a group of several lampposts, frees up some capacity for additional charge points. But once also all charge point capacity or electrical capacity has been made use of, we also get a lot of feedback from local authorities that have been working with us now for a longer time, that they rather reinforce the electrical supply for an existing lamppost than putting up new charge points or even cabinets in the streets. As Thorsten also mentioned, 3.7 kilowatt. Actually, the maximum power we can get from this one single phase charge point is 5.5 kilowatt. The maximum capacity is 25 ampere. So that depends on the local grid and the capabilities of the connection, of the grid connection of the lamppost itself. But we can work with basically anything up to 25 ampere. I think less than in total 2 kilowatt will lead to some acceptance issues, potential acceptance issues by cars that they do not charge for 1.5, 1.6 kilowatt. But there's a lot of wiggle room there and a very nice bandwidth from about 2 to 5.5 kilowatt, where charging makes a lot of sense because cars are parked for a long time. Ubitricity does not only supply these lampposts, we are actually operating them, and we also bring the operating software, the back end, to do so. So it is a full service or turnkey solution that you can obtain from us. Specifically in the US, I am adding here that there is also optionally, of course, the way. So first of all, we're talking about a future for us. What we are interested right now is just starting an exchange, finding out what is interesting. Is our solution as it comes something, and that is probably not the case, that out of the box fulfills all the needs of the Northern American market? There will be questions, there will be some remarks, and there will probably be amendments to that product, or until it becomes a product that is specially for the North American market. And also for the back end, this goes hand in hand. Of course, here we have the options of localizing, or we also have Greenlots as a partner that is very experienced in the North American market. It's very much well known, and also already existing partner for many municipalities and local authorities. So it might be of benefit to also look into that direction of splitting tasks between Ubitricity and Greenlots. One example where what I was referring to earlier when I said it gives us just more possibilities to pursue and achieve our goals of bringing electricity everywhere, and also making that in a manner that it is useful to the EV driver and to the uptake for EVs. Basically, these are the 5 pillars that would be subject of a further conversation, to look what is actually the local requirements. We can look into the hardware and how we can support here. Then there is the installation, which is a service that usually makes a lot of sense to integrate that also locally into how lampposts are being maintained, to make sure to make use of well, let's say, very efficient processes when it comes to the maintenance and the operation of the charge points and the lampposts. The ownership of the lamppost is a very interesting point, but also the ownership and the operational model around the lamppost. One example I can quote here is referring to a press release that we issued a week and a half back, I believe. So we set ourselves together with Shell and Shell support, we set ourselves the target of deploying 50,000 charge points in England until 2025. So that is part of our overall objective that we have. And in order to facilitate this, there is also a financial component to that, as we know that for the rollout of charging infrastructure, the financing and funding is a very important topic, and funding does not always cover 100%. We have opened, in that case, market-specific solutions that allow for a co-financing of the charge points, so the local authority can make maximum use out of the funding, even if that does not cover the complete capex. And then we look into an operational model that justifies this invest. This is now for the UK, and for other markets, we are in the let's say process of learning what would be the ideal offering here, and we're shaping this as we go. So this is also one of the examples where Shell, and being part of the Shell group, and the general move towards the energy transition and the carbon neutral future plays very well into our expansion plans. And in the end, let's not forget the driver. This is also, of course, part of the services, and first and foremost, the most important aspect. And Thorsten also shared this very nice pie chart. How do EV drivers actually access charge points? This is something where we pay a lot of attention to. The first and foremost and easiest way to access a charge point is, of course, just to enter some payment details and go without the need of having an account. But also users may have pre-existing memberships, cards, key fobs, you name it, that they want to use to actually authorize or authenticate themselves and authorize the charging transaction. Also that for that interoperability, the technical basis is given, let me put it that way. We built these a few words to the charge points itself, also to visualize this a little bit more. Here's a slightly different angle. When we can, we introduce or we retrofit existing lampposts, but not all lampposts are made for that. Not all lampposts are positioned well for that. Maybe there's a hydrant next to it, or a double line, or in London, even a mailbox can make it a little bit complicated at times to park next to it, or it's just plainly not on the curbside. In these cases, we can go for satellite solutions. So here we have slightly in the background, you see the lamppost, and in the foreground, you see this bollard. The bollard is actually retrofit with an Ubitricity charge point, and the lamppost in the background that supplies the electricity. It is a little bit of civic work that was required here, but still it is the lamppost facilitating the bollard to be used. This can of course also be used in other contexts, or the lamppost, the charger is retrofit into other urban furniture. We have meanwhile developed several versions. I will not go through all of them. This is basically what it looks when it comes out of the box. You have one or several outputs. Some markets require special additional charging outlets, and you have this large cylindrical black object that is the electronics box. It is thinner and not in one component, so it can actually be used further up in the lamppost column, where usually there's a little bit less space, but also less competition for this real estate inside of the lamppost. And we use this as the, let's say, original simple socket as used in the UK. But also we are, and this is what I mentioned earlier, we have developed a version for the German market, which has, let's say, regulation-wise, always some things up the sleeve, and there's some laws and some norms that need to be obeyed, or a municipality just wants us to fulfill, even though it's not a law. Electrical norms can be requested, of course, by the buyer, and we'll be happy to follow this then. So we've teamed up with the company EB. EB is also the supplier that Thorsten was mentioning earlier. We've teamed up with them to create a new charge point that actually brings the potential for more charging power, but also compliance with all regulative requirements here in Germany to the market. And so we are going bit by bit towards what actually the market needs and requires from us. Last words about how we allow the driver to access. I mentioned earlier, the easiest way is probably just to scan this QR code, enter your credit card details, and go. You do not need any kind of membership or account. All you actually do is like an online checkout in a shop, and of course you can also use third-party services and the Shell Recharge app. I think on that note, I will end. I've already run a little bit over time, so thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Renee. That was fantastic. So one of the absolutely essential catalysts in bringing us all together today was a virtuous meeting that we had back in February with our next speaker, Larry Tuttle, who's the founder and CEO of Clearworld, an alternative energy systems provider that designs and retrofits energy efficient systems, and whose clients have included some local governments in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And when Bob and I met with Larry, it was like an innovation bomb going off in our minds. And we realized that the work that was taking place in Bottrop and in Berlin through Torsten and Renee's work wasn't just pie in the sky, it was actually applications that were taking place here in the United States that complemented the work that Steve and his team had been undertaking. So to wrap things up is Larry Tittle from Clearworld, who's going to give us some insight into how his work has actually embodied a lot of that which we've heard from across the pond. Thanks, Larry.
Thank you. So I'm assuming everybody can see my screen. So thank you everybody for joining today. I know everybody has a lot going on. So today I'm going to share with you a little bit about Clearworld, what we do, where we've been, and where we're going. So Clearworld. Okay, let's do this. That's enough. Okay, here we go. Okay, so who is Clearworld? So our core values are very clear: customer commitment, leadership, error proofing, accountability, and resilience. What do we do? So we provide an alternative energy system solution where we design and we retrofit energy efficient systems that reduce operating and maintenance costs in pursuit of grid independence. What we are is a very aesthetically pleasing solar LED retrofit. It's an LED retrofit that can be retrofitted onto any existing or new light pole. Half of our business is new work, the other half is existing work. I am the founder, CEO of Clearworld, and I did invent the product. We do have a patent in the US and 2 patents in China. It's the only one like it in the world. Our focus is wide ranging, from municipals to engineering and design, private developers, and federal contracts. In fact, in the last 2 years, we've sold to over 120 municipalities in the US. We get specified into projects regularly. We have ESCO companies, we have utility companies, large and even co-ops that are now understanding the impact of climate change and helping make the world a better place. And so we actually work with several, including developers. So we have some developers where our citizens, our municipals, and private people say, hey, we want to take these overhead lines, we want to bring them underground, and we want to go back with solar lights because of redundancy and resiliency, and people are just realizing today how important that is. When I founded the company, to share a personal note with you, I am from the Northern Virginia, DC area. That's where I grew up. That's where I was born, in Fairfax Hospital. My family is in Fredericksburg today, so I love it there. We have 4 seasons. However, today I'm also in New Orleans, where we get lots of hurricanes and disasters, and as you may hear on the news quite frequently. And so that's part of the main reason why I created this product, because it's changing, and it's changing fast. We've been in business over 10 years, and our primary focus 10 years ago was off-grid lighting. Only 6 years ago, LED lighting was at 1% in the US. And so today it's over 30%. So with all of the entities and folks that we work with, we work with them based on where their innovations are, their strategies, where they're at. Do they just need lights for their parks? Do they need roadways? Which we accommodate all the time. But there's just so much more that this product lends itself to, as I share more with you. We are involved in federal contracts. We are also on the GSA schedule. We have a wide-ranging selection of off-grid and on-grid lights. The ones that we use on the left is for interior parking lot lights, roadways, tollways, bridges. We have a full line of LED lighting from adjustable floods to parking lots to Cobra head styles. So whatever our customers are looking for, we also custom design things. So different bases, different heads. You give me a picture and I have the ability to create things. On the far right, as you can see, there's a picture of a battery pack. That battery pack slips in and slips out in a matter of 15 to 20 minutes. The whole system is very plug and play. In fact, that street light that you see, a residential post-top street light, was 6.5 foot under flooded rushing water through Hurricane Harvey. All of 45 of our lights were the only lights in the whole city, and for over 2 weeks until the power is restored. And so it goes a long ways. Today, we can do without lights for 3 hours a day, a couple of days. But what really happens when your networks, your critical infrastructure, and everything becomes built upon that network? Then you need resiliency, you need redundancy. And so with the battery storage and the solar and our hybrid smart poles where we can pull power from the grid and store it into our battery packs, we can keep the assets alive for days. We do focus on off-grid lights, on-grid lights as retrofits onto existing infrastructure. So if our customers, want to use their existing poles, whether they're concrete, for utilities, we do wooden poles, tapered aluminum poles, any type of poles, we retrofit to those poles, and we can create an off-grid light. On-grid and then smart city, which we consider to be the foundation of power, is where we've moved in the last couple of years. This here just talks about the economics. When you don't have to put infrastructure, conduit, cabling, metering, all of those things, it's a substantial savings. One of our cities, city of Fort Lauderdale, I flew down there and met with the city manager. One of the utilities down there, hey, how much do you want for these 1,300 lights for a particular subdivision? This company wants 9 million. How much are your lights? Well, it's 6.2, 6.3 million. So there's a substantial savings on the front end. However, I asked the gentleman, well, how much is your electric bill? And so he said, the Parks and Rec director spoke up and said, a little over $50 a month. And I said, oh, okay. So $50 a month times 1,300 light poles times 20 years is an additional 15.6 million in savings because there's no electric bill from day one. And so that naturally leads to projects and leads to phases and rollouts and creating a lighting as a service program, basically, as a tax exempt municipal to gain advantage of the tax credits that this product lends itself to. The value, renewable energy, energy efficiency, eliminates carbon footprint, retrofits to new and existing infrastructure, increased reliability and safety during adverse weather conditions. We have these all over Florida, the Prime Minister's office in the Bahamas, So there's just a lot of areas in the Caribbean and parts of the U.S., including New Orleans, that that these have a compounding beneficial effect. We also have these in Canada at a power company, at Vancouver Airport. We have them in the Middle East, in U.S. military bases, in Qatar and Kuwait. So we have actually been tested in every type of condition, and this system is warranted for 10 years. So there's a lot of value in the cylindrically designed and wrapped solar panels, which are self-cleaning, versus a glass panel that's at 30 degrees that has dust, bird droppings, and other things. And then finally, what we have here is our smart pole. Our smart pole is very unique. There's nothing else like it in the world. We do have several partners, from Comcast Smart City to Qualcomm to Nokia is a reseller of our products. And so what we did is we created an aesthetically pleasing smart pole that down there on the bottom you can actually open up and put your carrier radios, multi-tenant carrier radios. So whether it's AT&T, T-Mobile, or Verizon, you can reach it from the ground. Above that, there's gunshot detection that actually goes off with cameras that pan, tilt, zoom, and record. But we have a full line of smart applications. The solar's on top of that, providing the redundancy to 1 to 6 to 1 day of backup power to keep your assets alive. One of the things that I read last night, actually I was speaking to somebody from the city of Austin last night, and today there's 86,000 small cells that are being deployed onto light poles, which will tie the cities together. However, in the next 10 years, there will be 800,000 small cells on the light poles. And so that's a big issue. But more importantly, what do you want your cities to look like? You want your cities to not have all of these attachments and cables and wires, but you want something that's very aesthetically pleasing. So today we have the widget, we have the iPhone for smart infrastructure that looks great in plain view. But tomorrow, through our partnerships with Texas State and students and everybody creating the applications on the iPhone to make your city safer and more efficient, there's a lot of things that we will do and continue to do to make cities safer and more importantly, again, efficient. We have several offerings from environmental sensors. So whether we're doing flood sensors in Virginia Beach area, or we're doing smoke out west, or whatever our customers are looking for, we have that. We also have a bunch of cameras and AI enforcement, license plate readers, Wi-Fi. We did the city of Dallas, city of Virginia Beach, Lancaster, and Matthews in December of last year using COVID CARES Act funding, where we placed these Wi-Fi repeaters all over, from libraries, community centers, schools, residential areas for remote learning and work, using the COVID CARES Act funding, which came from the federal government down to the state of Virginia, and then out to the sponsored party, which is the municipal. So there's a lot of creative innovations that are taking place that we're involved in. And again, we're really happy to be, part of those things. We have a full line of different styles, from heads, post-top heads, to hooks, to the traditional, more contemporary styles, from type 2 to type 4, and we have a full offering. I did see one of the questions that popped up on the feed, and certainly we'll have more. But I was at Digital 360 Summit a couple weeks ago, speaking on smart energy and smart utilities panel, and and as part of that, there's always questions that come up related to privacy, and so myself and many other parties that I work with, we want to make the world a better place, whether it's through initiatives, sustainable or resilient measures, or just general safety, which becomes number one. And so, yes, we do have gunshot detection, and yes, we're putting fiber rings around city with fiber to our smart poles with all of the smart applications as a P3 partnership and doing big projects. But when you're capturing that person that is committing a crime and breaking the law, does it really matter at that point? No. And if I'm a citizen, I would want to know something that happened to my brother, my sister, my child, and I would give up that privacy for safety. And so, there are a lot of other things that happen, and and I'm not one to pick sides by any means, but just imagine if that person, that little girl that was recording the George Floyd incident, where she didn't have that camera, she didn't have that phone, but yet there was a drone overhead that was recording the whole incident. And so there's good people and bad people on every side, on both sides. But having an objective view will go a long way. And so whether it's smart military bases with drones and drone landing stations to recharge the drones that then take off, the future is here. And so how we embrace that and how we make the world a better place will last for generations to come. And so with that, I will yield, and thank you for listening to everything that we have.
Thank you so much, Larry. Thanks for a great presentation. Tim has been collecting the questions that have been flowing into the chat for all our panelists, and Jeff and Bob are going to also help moderate. So Tim, take her away.
Excellent. Thanks, Dale. Let me pop my camera back on. Good morning, everyone. I've got a few questions from the chat. I suppose I'll go in order of our speakers first. So the first few questions we have are for Thorsten. I think the first one was answered in terms of what does insect friendly mean. I don't think we need to go into that. There was a bit of discussion in the chat, unless folks do want to continue discussing that. I'll just move on to the next one. Drop it in the chat if you'd like to learn more about that. The next question was, how does the payment system work for the charging at streetlights? And what is the ownership structure of the charging infrastructure?
I can maybe address this. René speaking. There's a couple of transactions happening. First of all, because that is asked also in a later question, I believe, the charge point operator, the CPO, usually purchases the electricity from the grid. So there's a PPA of sorts being made at that point. It also involves the question, of course, how is this being metered, etc. There's several options, and it needs to be determined with the local grid operator and utility in place. So that's the first, the CPO, which usually is Ubitricity then in that case, if you work with us, of course. Then we would pay the general electricity bill for all the charging transactions, all the energy for all the charging transactions. Then comes, of course, the question who pays for the driver's charging transaction. The driver is directly billed depending on how he decides to authenticate. Either he uses the QR code, does an online check out, and enters, for example, his credit card detail, then is easily billed on this credit card without an account. When the charging is over, he receives an email with a receipt that then refers to the booking that had happened. Or if the authentication is happening through an app like the Shell Recharge app, because the user is a pre-existing member of this app, then he would be billed in the models that the app actually foresees, that usually monthly billing with a listing of all your charging transactions, where you then see that on September 14th, you've been charging at noon at the lamppost in this or that street for this and that time. And then you get billed based on the kilowatt hour on time and the plugin. So just for the transaction, a one-off. That depends very much on the setup, how we can facilitate the city's objectives in terms of parking space usage. So, long answer.
Thanks, Rene. Just following immediately up on that, would the driver understand the costs before charging? Especially when utilities use time of use rates, this could be quite a different cost point.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and I see Louisa has her hand raised as well.
So maybe first a question from Louisa.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you for taking my question. So I hear the way that you guys are set up. I have an example from the city of Greenbelt where we have actually a DC fast charging station. Originally, we were not charging people the cost of the electricity. When we did decide to start charging people, a software was installed, and then the people that are managing the software want a certain cut for managing the software. And this brings the price to a point where people are not using the station anymore because it's too expensive. So how does that work in your case?
Precisely the same way. We have, but totally differently, of course. You're talking about a DC charging station, and a DC charging station, as you are experiencing now, is a rather costly thing to operate. The purpose of DC charging usually is to extend the range of a driver. So you'll find them at roadhouses on the way, or if you're really in a fix, if something unexpected happened. The usual EV driver changes his refueling behavior or re-energizing behavior after a while into the more comfortable option of just charging where he parks. And then using AC charging infrastructure, which is much less costly to operate, and therefore also there is a much lower overhead on the actual energy cost that is being passed on to the driver. It is a little bit more expensive, but it is also safer than charging at home. At home, we always have the risk that the hardware used, the equipment used, the devices used are not built for long time usage. So it even makes sense to prefer an AC charge point, a public one, to a household output because it is safer in many cases. But it is way more efficient for the broad rollout to use AC charging. There will always be a markup of everyone who is involved, more or less. And for DC, it will more and more level out, that we will see that DC chargers are used for range, and in a scenario where the user is also aware that this now is an exceptional case, or it is a daily driver that knows that this high power that he requires comes at a higher effort also from the providing side. This is something that needs to level out also in perception, and yeah.
And I see there were quite a few number of questions in the chat, but it looks like Rene's done an awesome job on the keyboards getting back to everyone. So I have like one that just came in. Maybe we can, if we do feel like there's any more discussion on previous questions, folks can unmute themselves and ask those questions. But I'll go to one of the ones that hasn't been answered, which just came in a few minutes ago, which is, I guess this is also for the audience, which is, have localities considered simply getting rid of lamps? Almost all of I-95 from Fredericksburg to Richmond has no streetlights, and it seems to work fine. Studies are mixed on whether they actually improve safety. EV chargers could still be installed where light poles had been, would definitely save money. I'll kind of go through this whole comment so that folks can digest that and then possibly answer this, but should very strongly consider the impact to animal life and human psyches. Maybe roll out only to arterial roads, high crime areas, and keep residential sodium bulbs. On top of that, there's also privacy concerns. I doubt most citizens want to be have surveillance. So I don't know if there are any comments on that, perhaps from Larry or any of the other speakers are welcome to discuss any of those thoughts. And then after that, we can open it up to the audience for Q&A.
One of the things that I've seen specific to Virginia is VDOT, where they've reached out to us and they say, hey, we've got these digital boards that have, speed, variable speed, or hey, we need some additional light. We have some gaps in our programs. We see in Florida more and more, there's a lot of cabinetry and communication devices, Wi-Fi, or just beefing up the network. We're starting to move more into communications as a redundant source rather than lighting. Lighting is very important. The Department of Justice saw a 35% decrease in crime by having the proper lighting or having just lighting in general, right? So there's definitely a value proposition there.
Related to that, I see that Kate from Falls Church, Kate Walker, says that a few residents have expressed a preference for no street lighting in residential areas. It looks like they're going to run a pilot project before rolling out their LED replacement project. Another question, just following up with Larry, is where can folks in Northern Virginia see some of the lights Clearworld has installed?
Yeah, so we have them in Fredericksburg. We have a few projects in Fredericksburg, Virginia. We have them in Hampton. The whole Virginia Beach, Norfolk, Hamptons Roads area is doing a 100-mile fiber ring. So we're part of that whole initiative in Lower Virginia. However, I certainly would welcome and invite. I'm speaking on another panel at Smart City Connect 2021 at the Gaylord. So it's a smart city convention where we'll be showcasing our solution and have a live pole that has a digital billboard and gunshot and all of the sensors. So that's, will be part of Nokia, Jacobs Engineering, and a funder. So I would certainly encourage everybody to, take the time, and if they need tickets, happy to accommodate. But certainly there's not just us and myself that will be there, but there will be a lot of really unique and creative smart city products and solutions that I think folks can benefit from in that Northern Virginia, Maryland, DC area. And that's in October, the second week in October.
And there's another question here for you, Larry, which is, what purposes do the environmental sensors on the lamp pole serve? Could the environmental data be transmitted remotely in real time?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we actually have 911 call buttons. So you push the button and the blue light starts to flash. And then the lights start to flash and it sends an alert out to the police or whomever. But we also, why we have these screens here in the background is because we have a digital display dashboard where you can see all of your smart devices on one platform. And so everything is connected. So and it's all real time. So whether it's smart lights, environmental sensors, cameras, it's at one location, which is great for in working with the police departments for surveillance and things of that nature. So, certainly, whether it's cellular connected or it's Ethernet or whatever form that a customer would want to use, we do have that available.
Related to the previous question, if we wanted to go and visit some of the Clearworld lights that have been deployed, is there a location closest to the District of Columbia that we can go to?
Yeah, so we right today we have a project which is a showcase project, and to be honest with you, we really just take it as it comes. But the city of Fredericksburg, right out at the riverfront by the water, is a really exceptional park. We have 24 of our units, and I can certainly send pictures and an address, but it's in downtown Fredericksburg there, right at the waterfront. And really that's what we consider to be a showcase project for us. It's about 50 minutes outside of the DC area, and certainly, you know, worth the trip. And then again, I will be at Smart City Connect in I would say about a month, and we will have a showcase smart pole display with all of the bells and whistles that we can share with you.
Great. Thank you, Larry. Additionally, just kind of going back to the data question, can developers access that data, and who has access to the data that is being collected through the various sensors?
Yeah, so the data is the person that is on the platform, the person that is creating the application and storing that data. Actually, they have access to that data. That data is not used. That data is not used other than for crime prevention. So it's not used for advertising. It could be if in fact it's authorized or allowed. There are a lot of other revenue streams that a city can benefit from, whether it's digital billboards or using those digital billboards to provide messaging, evacuation routes, things that are happening within the city. Those billboards go a long way from an advertising perspective. But even I've seen use cases where folks have used that information for capital improvements. Hey, I have this many pedestrians, I have this many cars traveling down this particular road. So there's information and data is the new gold, but it's how we use it in the right way, in the ethical way, and by educating the market and having those discussions with the citizens through public venues is the best way to go about that, because it is going to happen. It's already happening in other countries in a big way, but I do too share the same concerns that everybody shares, but it's actually using that information in the most practical way that everybody would naturally be able to benefit from.
And there's one last question for you, Larry, which is how long does the Clearworld battery last?
Sure. So the system is 10-year system, lithium-ion battery packs. The lithium-ion battery packs last 12 to 15 years. We shallow discharge our battery packs 20-25%. We are, well, not me, I didn't have time, but my electrical engineers on the ANSI 136 National Lighting Committee for Standards, based on an invite from Southern companies. And so we're actively involved in creating standards, but we adhere to RP8 roadway standards. We do lighting layouts for particular projects, and as part of that, we are very involved in just general lighting. So.
Great, thank you. I'll hand it back to Dale and Jeff to facilitate any questions. If I did miss any chat questions, please feel free to unmute and ask them now. So I'll divert to you and Jeff, Dale.
Great, thanks, Bob. Jeff, any closing comments? I guess not.
Thank you, Dale, for arranging this. It's great to see the dialogue continue with our friends from Germany, and a lot to think about. Certainly would like to see some more of these types of solutions deployed here in the National Capital Region, and really appreciate all the work you do at NVRC to bring this type of information to them.
There was a request for the presentations. We'll take them and circulate it to the audience. Those that register, we've got your emails, so we'll forward them after this. Thank you so much, everybody. Thanks, Torsten. Thanks, Renee. Thanks, Larry, Jeff, Bob.
Thank you, everybody, for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.